Modern life. It can feel like you're just constantly juggling, right? Career, family, your home. It's just a lot. Overwhelming, even. But what if that feeling, that constant sense of being overwhelmed, what if it's something more than just a busy schedule? Let's get into it.
I mean, does any of this sound familiar to you? That constant feeling that you're just running behind? That your keys have decided to play hide and seek again? Or, that sinking feeling when you remember an important appointment way too late. It is so frustrating, and it can seriously make you feel like you're just not cut out for this whole adulting thing.
Well, if that's not just a once-in-a-while thing but your everyday reality, the root of the problem might not be your schedule. It could actually be adult ADHD. That's attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And it's a condition that affects a ton of adults, messing with everything from their relationships to their careers.
Okay, before we go any further, here's the absolute most important thing to get straight. If it turns out you do have ADHD, it is not a personal failing. This isn't about you being lazy or irresponsible. Not at all. It's about biology.
And yeah, this really gets to the heart of the biggest myth out there. From the outside, it's so easy for people to look at someone with ADHD and think it's just a lack of willpower. But it's just not. The science is really clear on this one. It's a biological difference in the brain.
So what exactly is it then? Well, at its core, ADHD is what's called a neurodevelopmental disorder. A good way to think about it is like this. It's a challenge with the brain's main control center, its management system, the parts that are supposed to handle things like focus, organization, and impulse control. And let's say it again, it is not a character flaw. It's a real difference in how your brain is wired and how its chemistry works.
So many adults with ADHD never got diagnosed when they were kids. Instead, they just got labeled. Maybe you were called a daydreamer for staring out the window, or a slacker because you couldn't seem to finish your homework, or maybe even a troublemaker for being impulsive. And those labels, man, they stick with you. They can do some serious damage to your self-esteem over the years.
Right. So the image most of us have of ADHD is like a little boy bouncing off the walls, right? But in adults, it can look totally different. So what does it actually look like? What are the real signs and symptoms an adult might be dealing with?
Okay, so the symptoms tend to fall into 4 main groups, or clusters. And you don't have to have every single one, but seeing how they're all connected can be a huge aha moment for a lot of people. So let's break them down.
All right, first up, trouble concentrating. And look, this is way more than just getting distracted by your phone. We all do that. This is about your brain being constantly pulled in a million different directions by tiny sounds or random thoughts, things that most people can just tune out. It's that classic zoning out feeling right in the middle of a conversation, and then suddenly you snap back and realize you have absolutely no idea what was just said.
But here's where it gets kind of weird. There's this paradox. People with ADHD can also experience something called hyperfocus. So if you give them a task they're really into, something that's super engaging, they can get so absorbed in it that the rest of the world just disappears. Hours can go by. It's pretty wild. And it proves the issue isn't that you can never focus. It's that it's really, really hard to control and regulate that focus.
Okay, let's look at cluster number 2, which is a big one. Disorganization and forgetfulness. This is the classic stuff, right? The messy desk, the habit of putting everything off until the very last minute, that chronic, super frustrating lateness, and of course, the daily treasure hunt for your keys, your wallet, your phone, because you just set them down somewhere.
Next up, cluster 3, impulsivity. This can show up in smaller ways, like frequently interrupting people in conversations because a thought just bursts out and it has to be said right now. But it can also lead to much bigger problems, like making reckless decisions or those impulse buys that you regret later, all without really stopping to think through the consequences.
And that brings us to the last cluster, number 4. This one's all about emotional difficulties and a kind of hyperactivity that's not what you might think. We're talking about getting easily flustered and stressed out, having a short fuse, and, struggling with low self-esteem after a lifetime of feeling like you're just not measuring up. And that hyperactivity? It's often not about physically bouncing off the walls. For adults, it's more of an internal thing, a constant feeling of restlessness, like your brain just never ever shuts off.
And listen, this is a really, really important point. A lot of adults, and this is especially true for women, don't have that classic, obvious hyperactivity. For them, the restlessness is more like a mind that's always racing or just constant fidgeting. So please hear this. If you don't feel hyper, that absolutely does not mean you don't have ADHD.
So, okay, we've talked about the symptoms, but understanding them is just step 1. It's the way they all add up, their cumulative impact. That's what really matters. Because when ADHD goes untreated, it can cause some very real, very serious problems in pretty much every part of your life.
Think about your job. It can mean a long history of missed deadlines, finding it impossible to stick to a routine, and just that nagging feeling that you're not living up to your potential. And what about money? Well, you combine disorganization, like, say, losing bills, with that impulsivity we talked about, like compulsive shopping, and you've got a recipe for some serious debt.
And the hit to your health can be huge, too. These symptoms can be a factor in everything from anxiety and chronic stress, all the way to substance abuse issues. It can even be as simple and as serious as forgetting to take your medication, or just blowing off important doctor's appointments, which puts your physical health in real danger. And then, of course, there are your relationships. I mean, think about it. When you're always late, or you forget important things, or you're constantly interrupting, the people who love you can easily take that the wrong way. They might think you don't care or that you're being disrespectful. They see irresponsibility or insensitivity, and that can put a massive strain on the people you're closest to. So, look, after laying out all those heavy consequences, I really want you to take a second and focus on this quote from our source material. Just read it, let it really sink in for a minute. The idea that all these difficulties you've been through, they're not because you're weak or because there's something wrong with your character. Realizing that can be just an incredible source of relief. It can be the first step toward hope.
Because here's the good news. This is not a life sentence of struggle. Getting a diagnosis isn't the end of the story. It is the beginning. It's the starting point. It's the key that unlocks the door to finally understanding what's going on, learning how to manage it, and yes, even learning how to thrive. The whole game changes when you shift your perspective. This isn't about curing yourself. It's about learning strategies to manage the tough stuff, while also learning to see and use the unique strengths that so often come with an ADHD brain. And there are strengths. Things like incredible creativity, a ton of energy, and that amazing ability to think way outside the box. And you can actually start making changes right now. Our source material lays out some really powerful self-help strategies. Things like getting your health in order, exercise, sleep, diet can make a massive difference. Getting a handle on your time using simple tools like lists and timers can give you the structure you need. And maybe the most important one of all, learning to blame the ADHD, not yourself. That is a game-changing act of self-compassion. But of course, sometimes self-help isn't going to cut it, and that is 100% okay. There's so much professional support out there. Things like behavioral coaching, therapy, and for a lot of people, medication. These can all be incredibly effective tools to help you manage your symptoms and start building a life that you really love.
So let's leave you with this final thought. Instead of just focusing on all the challenges, what if we completely flip the script? For those who have ADHD is just a different kind of brain wiring. That's it. So the real question isn't what's wrong with me. The real question becomes, once I understand how I'm wired, what incredible, unique, and powerful strengths is this brain going to help me unlock?